In 1602, a private company was granted powers once reserved for sovereign states. It could wage war. It could negotiate treaties. It could coin money. It could rule foreign territories. This company was not a nation. It was not an empire. It was the Dutch East India Company, the Verenigde Oostindische Compagnie. Historians agree on one fact that remains unsettling even centuries later. This was the first multinational corporation in history, and the first to issue publicly traded shares. Its creation marked a structural rupture in how power operated on Earth. From that moment forward, profit-driven entities were no longer merely economic actors. They became political forces. At the time, few people noticed. Fewer understood the consequences. There was no announcement declaring a new world order. No declaration that sovereignty had begun to migrate quietly away from crowns and parliaments and toward balance sheets. Yet the result is measurable. Over the next centuries, decision-making authority would increasingly concentrate in organizations not elected by populations, not accountable to citizens, but structured to maximize return on investment. This is not a conspiracy. It is a documented evolution. The question is not whether it happened. The question is when it became irreversible, and whether we ever noticed the moment the world stopped being governed and started being managed. To understand how the world became corporate, we must reconstruct the world before it was. Before industrialization, power was territorial. Wealth was extracted primarily from land. Authority was personal, visible, embodied in monarchs, aristocracies, and religious institutions. Economic life was local, slow, and constrained by geography. Production depended on human labor, animals, wind, and water. Markets existed, but they did not dominate life. Most people lived where they were born, worked where they lived, and consumed what they produced. The idea that an abstract entity could outlive generations, own assets across continents, and influence politics without ruling territory would have seemed incoherent. Yet pressures were building. By the late 17th and early 18th centuries, European states were locked in continuous competition for trade routes, raw materials, and military advantage. Wars were expensive. Monarchies were perpetually in debt. The need for capital became chronic. At the same time, technological changes began accelerating. The steam engine, refined by James Watt in the 1770s, detached production from natural limits. Factories replaced workshops. Output scaled beyond local demand. Urbanization followed. Millions moved from rural economies into wage labor. Time itself was standardized, measured, sold, optimized. Crucially, ownership began to separate from labor. Those who worked no longer owned what they produced. Those who owned did not need to be present. This separation was not ideological, it was structural. By the early 19th century, legal innovations made it permanent. Limited liability laws, adopted widely in Britain and the United States by the mid-1800s, meant investors could profit without personal risk beyond their shares. An anomaly emerged, an entity that could accumulate wealth without bearing moral or physical consequences. At first, it seemed efficient. Then it became normal. And slowly, power began to change shape. In 1819, the U.S. Supreme Court decided a case called Trustees of Dartmouth College versus Woodward. At the time, it appeared technical, a dispute over a college charter. The court ruled that a corporate charter was a contract protected from state interference. The broader implication was barely discussed outside legal circles, but historians now recognize it as foundational. Corporations were granted legal personhood, the right to exist independently of their founders, immune to certain democratic controls. This did not cause outrage. There were no protests, no editorials warning of future dominance. It was seen as a legal clarification, not a civilizational shift. Yet the effect was immediate and measurable. Corporations could now persist indefinitely. They could own property, enter contracts, sue, and be sued, all while lacking morality, conscience, or citizenship. Across the Atlantic, similar developments unfolded. In Britain, the Joint Stock Companies Act of 1844 and the Limited Liability Act of 1855 accelerated corporate formation, capital pooled. Risk spread, shares exploded. The public response remained muted. Factories grew larger, railroads spread across continents, banking institutions consolidated, economic output soared. Living standards rose for some unevenly, but undeniably. What remained largely invisible was the asymmetry forming beneath the surface. By the late 19th century, a small number of corporations controlled critical infrastructure: steel, oil, rail, finance. Names like Standard Oil were not yet symbols, just businesses that worked extremely well. Governments noticed only when crises occurred. Antitrust laws emerged not as ideological resistance, but as damage control. The system itself was never questioned, only its excesses. That was the moment the architecture locked in. The factory floor, 1911. On the 25th of March 1911, a fire broke out at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York City. Within minutes, 146 workers were dead, mostly young immigrant women. Exit doors had been locked. Safety measures ignored. The scene was documented, testimonies recorded, photographs preserved. Official findings. Investigations confirmed negligence, yet the company's owners were acquitted. Liability was limited. The corporation survived. Structural effect. The deaths led to labor reforms, but the corporate form remained intact. The system absorbed the tragedy and continued operating. The boardroom, 1950 seconds. After World War II, corporations expanded globally. Multinational firms operated across jurisdictions, exploiting regulatory differences. Decision-making moved further away from affected populations. Public records. By the 1970 seconds, corporations accounted for a growing share of global economic output. Their revenues rivaled national budgets. Measurable shift. Political lobbying intensified. Regulatory agencies increasingly staffed by former industry executives. This was documented, legal, and normalized. The financial screen, 2008. In September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed. Global markets froze. Governments intervened with unprecedented bailouts. Official data. Public funds stabilized. Private institutions deemed too big to fail. Losses were socialized. Profits, historically, had been privatized. Structural silence. No referendum approved this shift. No new social contract was signed. The architecture simply revealed itself under stress. Each cycle followed the same pattern: innovation, concentration, crisis, absorption. Not coincidence. Structure. From the East India Company to modern multinationals, the structure remains consistent. Entities created for efficiency gradually acquire influence beyond their original mandate. Economic power precedes political influence. Legal recognition follows practical dominance. The names change, the mechanisms persist. Industrial trusts became financial institutions. Factories became platforms. Ownership became abstraction. Centralization accelerates, not through intent, but through incentives. Scale rewards efficiency. Efficiency rewards consolidation. Consolidation concentrates power. This is visible in every era. No secret counsel is required. No hidden hand. Only structure repeating itself. Today, the most powerful corporations do not manufacture physical goods. They manage information, attention, and infrastructure. Their influence is documented: control of communication platforms, ownership of data, integration into state functions. They operate legally, transparently, often with public cooperation. Power is no longer exercised through decree, but through design. Terms of service replace law. Algorithms replace policy. Optimization replaces ideology. This is not dystopian fiction. It is administrative reality. And it emerged not through overthrow, but through evolution. History does not announce its turning points. It records them later. No single day marked the moment the world became a corporation. Only a sequence of decisions, rational, documented, efficient. The structure we inhabit today was not imposed. It was built slowly, legally, quietly. The final question is not who controls it, but whether systems designed for profit can ever fully serve societies built on human values, and whether a structure that never sleeps, never votes, and never dies can truly be governed, or only managed. History offers no answer, only previous.